Hi, I'm Ari, I'm the Oak Witch, and in today's video I'm going to be going through my budget-friendly witchcraft tips. As witches, I feel like we tend to collect a lot of things and objects in our craft on our journey, and it can feel as though there's a lot of things that we need to get, but this isn't the case. And even if you do want to buy these things, witchcraft does not have to be expensive. And if anything, it shouldn't be expensive. We should be using what is around us, what is accessible, what is right in front of you to practice witchcraft. You know, cunning folk and wise women or wise people in the day used a cauldron because that was what they used to cook dinner. You know, that's just what they had, that was what was there. I won't be going through spell methods or types of magic which are budget friendly because I already did that video. I did a video called Easy Spell Methods for Beginners, and I already touched there on the idea of types of practices within witchcraft which are quite accessible for beginners and don't require a lot of money, so go check that out. I'll have it in the card and links below. But yeah, so here are my 10 budget friendly witchcraft tips. Number 1 is reuse mundane things. Reuse kitchen jars. So these are like jam jars, chutney jars, pickle jars, sauce jars, whatever. And you can reuse them. You can use them for your storing your herbs. You can use them for spell oils or just generally spells. You can use them as tea light holders or candle holders or deity candles. You know, you can use them for so much. One thing that I've been doing, I've been making my own balms and salves. I haven't actually peeled the label of this yet, but it's an old honey jar that I use for a salve, and these like shorter ones that are usually seen in like jam jars and chutney jars are really good for making salves, creams and like skincare products because you can still like fit, you know, your hand in. So those are really good. You can also turn old towels or rags or even old clothes, old shirts, socks, and use them as poppets or as sachets or spell bags, you know. So the idea is reuse what you have, get crafty, get creative. Tip number 2, normal herbs and spices found in your kitchen are fine to use. They're still magical. They still have magical properties. So if you're on a budget, check your kitchen. Check your parents' herbs and spices cupboard. Go to your local supermarket or grocery store and go to the spices section and you'll find a whole bunch. In my local supermarket, they have these. They have herbs and spices in these packaging. So there's basil, fennel and nutmeg that I've gotten from Sainsbury's in the UK. Just remind yourself that like you don't have to buy things from a spiritual or witchy store for them to be magical. You know, you can still find magic in the mundane world too. So tip number 3 is to find yourself a local wildlife guide, a book, buy one and go foraging for herbs. This is a great way to get to know your genii loci, your local land spirits, just in general the local nature around you. It's a great way to connect to nature. This is the one I have, but the layout is generally like this. You know, they have all sorts of plants, fungi, trees as well, invertebrates, vertebrates. Yeah, and it's basically an ecology book. Get one of these, get to know what, you know, what things look like, or take it with you and go out and try and spot things which you see around you. Try and spot some wildflowers and some plants and go foraging. Another way in which you can identify plants is through apps, and there's a really good citizen science app called iNaturalist, I think it's called. I'll put it here. This is really good because it actually contributes to scientists when they're actually looking for data on certain species. Another really good one is Picture This, which I'll again link, and I'll link them below. They're really good for you just take a picture of the plant and it will come up with its best guess what the plant is. It's usually pretty good. So get yourself a way in which you can identify nature around you, be it in like a good old-fashioned book form or an app. 2 tips when you're foraging is don't take everything. Leave stuff for the spirits and leave stuff for the nature, wildlife, and say thank you when you're done. Tip number 4. Tip number 4 is to grow your own herbs. Now this may seem a bit of a bad budget tip on the front of it, because obviously you have to spend the money on the seeds and the soil and the plant pots, but that initial investment is really worth it, because then you have a plant that you're tending for, you're caring for, you're having a relationship, a direct relationship with nature, which is really valuable. And that plant itself, obviously, if cared for properly, will grow, and you'll have your own herbs. For if you do indoor herbs, for example, you'll have your own herbs which you can use in your craft, and that will be a bountiful supply of them. So tip number 5, check your local currency equivalent store. So there's like Poundland here in UK, the dollar store. My Dutch friend said that the euro equivalent is Action. He listed a whole bunch of others, but yeah, Action, if I'm making any sense. Yeah, so go to those types of stores and keep your eyes peeled. This also counts for like general like thrift stores, and keep your eyes peeled for jars, for bottles, for bowls, altar decorations, just anything which calls out to you. What I'll emphasize though are tea lights. Tea lights are so good. They come in a pack of like however many, it depends. See, this pack is 100 tea lights that I got from Wilko. If anyone in the UK knows what that is, I got them from Wilko, and they weren't that expensive. That pack of tea lights was really cheap, and that's lasted me since uni, when I lived in the city, so I've had that pack for a while. Tea lights are really versatile. You can dress them in oil, you can carve into them, obviously you take them out the casing. They come in different colours, and you can sprinkle herbs on the top. Just be careful to not make like a firebomb, you know, like practice fire safety. So you can still use them in different ways. And of course, if you're someone who can't really like use actual fire, you can just get the LED tea lights, and that still works perfectly fine. And if anything, that's probably more cost efficient. So tip number 6, can't afford minerals? Don't worry about it. Just literally go outside and find a rock. Yeah, so I was one of those spiritual children who really liked crystals, really liked minerals, the proper term, and I was a crystal collector. I have a bunch of crystals. If you haven't seen my crystal collection video, I will link it. But in recent years, where I've been getting more into folk magic, folk practices, I am not really buying crystals anymore, especially because of the industry and the issues within it and the way in which they mine the minerals. So anyway, a lot of people want to buy loads of crystals, but they tend to get quite pricey after a while, especially, you know, big nice ones. So I just want to say to you that like crystals, stones, rocks, pebbles, they all come from the earth. They all are a part of nature, and they all have magical properties. Just because it doesn't look like a really fancy crystal with loads of gorgeous patterns and, you know, colours, doesn't mean that it doesn't have magical properties. You can still use it in your craft. Some things I want to bring to light are hagstones. Hagstones are essentially random rocks found, like any rock essentially, that has a natural worn hole in the middle. There is an emphasis on it being a natural hole. Like worn away, for example, you find a lot on the beach where the waves and the ocean and the water has eroded through a hole in the stone. So not necessarily someone who's like drilled a hole through the stone. Here are some examples. I probably found these on the beach. I don't live by the beach, by the way, but whenever I do go to the beach, I just hunt these to death. I don't relax, I just go rock hunting. But yeah, so they're used a lot in protective magic. There's a lot of folklore behind hagstones, used a lot in liminality, and there's a whole folklore custom that if you like see through them, you can see fairies. I I think it's really interesting and I really love them. And they're, you know, they're really cost efficient. You know, you just go out and try find some. Other things like that include shells, but it can be just any rock you find. And if you're struggling to find any properties or magical properties online for something that you found, make your own. I've decided I probably will do a separate video on how to build your own correspondences because I think it's quite an in-depth topic, but just a quick tip I guess I can just throw in here. Connect with the stone, meditate on the stone, hold it in your hand. What does it feel like? What does it look like? The colours, the shape, how it feels in your hand. Smell, I mean, you can taste it if you want. I wouldn't, but you can do that. So think about the answers to those questions. What do you get from the stone and from using your senses? Is it cold to touch? Is it quite heavy in your hand? Does the heaviness in your hand feel quite grounding? Does it, you know, does it make you feel good about yourself? You know, does it ground you? So if it does, then you might actually want to say, hey, actually this is my grounding stone now. Things like that. Get creative and just really use the idea of your, you know, what it brings you, and you can build your correspondences in really simple ways like that. So tip number 7 is to get yourself a book subscription service, and the one I'm going to recommend is Scribd. There are ones like Audible, which I've not used, I don't think I will use, so I can't really give any recommendations on anything else, but I'm going to personally recommend Scribd because I've used it and I love it. It is a good service. There are so many pagan, witch, occult titles on there. It's great. There are so many titles on there. And they come in book form, audio book, I think there's magazines on there too, and podcasts. So there's a lot of different like methods and ways in which you can absorb the information. It's not just ebooks, so I really recommend it. So the price of Scribd is roughly like $9.99 a month, at least in pounds, which can seem like a lot, but if you think about it this way, I mean, I don't know about you, but I read a lot in my craft. I like reading a lot of books, and at least this year I've been reading like 6 books a month, which is expensive, you know, bearing in mind that a book alone can cost you around about like, you know, £10, so that is expensive. So something like Scribd has been such a lifesaver. There's so many titles on there which I've always wanted to read, I've never gotten around to buying or picking up. And yeah, Scribd will definitely give you worth your money. So tip number 8 is for those who can't necessarily afford 10 quid a month for books, you know. And I get that, that's fine. Instead, I may offer you free online book sites, legal sites, because we want to support our authors. So these include, off the top of my head, Hermetic Library, Sacred Texts, I think there's a few others. I will link them down below that you can click on and you can go look at them for yourself. These sites are legally free because the books that they have on there are essentially they've run out of copyright, so they can be distributed legally. And these actually include quite a lot of really good texts, and they include a lot of like the old texts from, like, you know, for example, Aleister Crowley or Gerald Gardner's books are online for you to go read legally. So you can definitely take advantage of these sites. Okay, yeah, they're not brand new books, which, you know, everyone's reading nowadays, but the old literature will still always be valuable and useful to read. So if you haven't read them and you are struggling to actually afford any books, you can go online and read that literature for free legally and still get valuable information out of them. And if this doesn't float your boat, then go to your local library. Go and get a library card and install apps like Overdrive and Libby. And essentially they are apps which use your library card, and you can have access to your local library's like titles that they have in like ebook version. And if your local library doesn't have a title that you want, you can just request for the title, and you never know. You never know what they can do for you until you ask. So there's that as well. Tip number 9 is a bit of a weird tip, I guess, but follow witch, pagan, occult authors on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, wherever you use the most. I would say Twitter, to be honest, but maybe I'm just biased because I use that a lot. But follow them. Follow, in general, people in the community online. There's a whole bunch of us, and there's a whole bunch of people giving valuable information on their social media profiles for free that you can utilize. Okay, they're not as trustworthy and academic as a book, and obviously I think books are still way better, but you know, if you're really struggling, you'll find that a lot of authors have blogs. A lot of these trustworthy authors have their own blogs, or they write on blog sites such as Pathios Pagan, and go check them out. Go take advantage of that information. Some other people that might be good to follow are like organisations. I can only really speak from like my experience being in the UK, but we have like Pagan Federation, there's Doreen Valiente Foundation, there's Children of Artemis. There's a whole bunch which I'm just completely forgetting about. But these foundations, these organisations, they list a lot of online events, workshops, talks. They tend to share a lot of information in the community and things like that, which you can participate in and get a lot out of. So yeah, follow them, because why not? For example, in the UK there is a Pagan Dawn magazine which is ran by the Pagan Federation, and I think it's a yearly subscription. It's not that much money. I want to say something like 10 quid or 20 quid or something. That's for the whole year, and then 4 times a year you get a magazine full of, you know, articles from authors and just general witchy writers, full of great information. And that is something which, you know, is budget friendly. You're still in the community, you're getting information, take advantage of it. And tip number 10 is invest in things which will act as tools for you, which is pretty vague, but let me explain. It's about finding ways in which you can turn things into like a hobby, like hobby crafts, if that makes sense. So things like candle making or sewing and like knitting, clay making your own tools. For example, a few years back I decided I wanted to start making my own candles. I just wanted to know how to do it because I buy a lot of candles and stuff like this, and I figured, hey, I have some essential oils, surely all I really need is the wick and the candle wax, and make my own. And I did, and I got this in a few years ago. It's like just a whole pack of soya wax, and I got some dyes, and I bought some wicks, and these have lasted me ages, by the way. And yeah, and then I just make my own candles, and I have actually, the last one I had is kind of completely burnt out now. But what I'll do for things like this is I will put boiling water in, and then the wax will rise, and then it will harden as it cools, and then you can take it out, and then you can reuse the wax, melt them all down, and then you can obviously just put that back in and add a dye and then blah blah blah. So I'll probably do a candle making video to make that more clear. But so that in itself has just basically prevented me from actually buying my own like container candles. I don't, other than spell candles or pillar candles, I don't buy container candles anymore, and I probably won't, because I'll just make my own. So having like knowledge and like the base tools and the base ingredients for that, I think it's something that's really useful. It's like crafting. And it's a witchcraft, right? Yes, you can make them witchy. So things like sewing tools, like a needle and thread. You can use sewing in sigil magic, in just general charms and talismans, making your own poppets, making your own charm bags. And so having like sewing needles, for example, that in itself is a tool which you can invest in and, you know, learn how to use, and then you can use that in your craft, and that's really budget friendly. So yeah, those are my tips for the budget friendly witch. I hope you enjoyed them. I think it's something that we need to remind ourselves, especially, you know, seeing the presence of aesthetics in witchcraft online, is that they don't necessarily define your craft. I said this in my last video, but aesthetics, if you want your craft to be beautiful, that's great, but it doesn't necessarily define your witchcraft, and I think that that can get in the way of building our craft, and it can definitely contribute to this whole idea of, you know, okay, oh wow, okay, I need to spend all this money to like practice magic, or I can't do this certain prosperity spell because I don't have a green pillar candle. Just the idea of placing so much emphasis on the tool, I think, completely goes against the actual point of witchcraft to begin with and where it originated. And if you think back in the day, they just used what they had, they used what was around them, and what was around them were plants and household objects, and that's where you see basically things like the cauldron. And yeah, we use them now, and that's fine if you use a cauldron. I mean, I use a cauldron, but remember where it came from, you know, why that specific tool was used. It was just because it was what was already in their house. So bear that in mind when it comes to practicing witchcraft. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, any more ideas about this, any tips that you have for budget-friendly witches, put them down below so that other people can see and other people can read your tips as well. And yeah, hope you have a good day, and thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.